Welcome. Today's video is the second in the series about Huddles, Huddle board, visual management, all key components of the lean management system. In today's sessions, we're going to be working together, sharing experiences about performance boards, how they've been built by some team members and how they're being built by other team members. We're going to review a little bit about Lean 101 to get it started, and we're going to talk about aspects of how we can improve as an organization by creating the connectedness of the huddle boards in all groups and all areas. I hope you enjoy the video, learn a lot from it, and look forward to seeing you in future videos in the future.
Chris caught a cold in Amsterdam, and so
The Dutch have infected me.
recovering from that. So as he goes and recovers, we will move to the next slide. This is just an overview of Lean, and so I know that you have seen these concepts before as you've been working with Chris, but we wanted to level set and just get on the same page about the things that we're going to be talking about today, and as we get into the focus around the huddles and the performance boards, how these things that you all have been learning over the last couple of years play into that. So across the top is the 8 forms of waste, and I know it's pretty small to see. Our next slide has them bigger, and so we'll go through them a little bit more in depth. A lean organization focuses on the elimination of waste to get to the standard work and flow, so that work is not getting bunched up in different queues and inventories and is being done as efficiently and effectively as possible. A lot of that waste then you can start to work through in your continuous process improvement through visual management tools, which is what going to be our focus today. Those things all put together, then you get to the purpose of maximizing customer value. So everything that you are doing is for the benefit of the customer. And just as an aside, the customer here isn't necessarily the outside external customer that you may think of conventionally. It can be whoever it is that is waiting for your product or service at the other end. So you may have internal customers as well as external customers. So on the previous slide, we talked about the 8 wastes, and these are them. You can see them a little bit better here. So the first we'll talk about in an overview is around inventory or tasks. So what that refers to is the backlog of work not started. So half completed work, things that you had to leave because you may have been interrupted or waiting for something, but it's piling up, and it's you can see this as piles of paper on desks, emails, excess supplies. Moving down correction and rework, so that waste is in regard to things that may come to you as work that are not correct. And so they require additional effort to correct them. Overproduction is work that stacks up in one queue because too much of it was produced in the previous queue. So in looking to attain flow, you want to avoid overproduction in one step if it's getting backed up in the next step. And so that you can see as a waste that you can start to identify what the causes of that are in regard to overproduction. Overprocessing and overproduction are from time to time confused a little bit. So overprocessing is really gold plating. So giving your customer, and again, customer in the whoever is the output of your process, more than they actually want or need. Waiting is another waste. So waiting for approval cycles, waiting on information, waiting for people in meetings. One of the questions that I asked the senior leadership team this morning is, how many of your meetings start on time? So that's an example of waiting. Motion is the next one on the list. So this is unnecessary things like making trips to the printer, to the copier, looking for things. You have things on your desk. We met with someone this morning who is starting to use visual management, and he said, I'm not looking for things anymore. So we eliminated that waste in that regard. Transportation is moving stuff around unnecessarily. So this can be both virtual, moving code through the system, moving information electronically, or it can be moving physical things like files and paper, supplies, things like that. And then the last one is intellect. Also, some people refer to this as skills. And so an organization really has a lot of waste if they're not fully utilizing the skills and talents of all the people in the organization. So, and this is what sometimes is referred to as the 8th waste. There's traditionally 7 wastes. So intellect or skills is another waste that has been recently added.
Why is it important to know the 8 wastes? Anybody?
So you can start to identify them
You can start to identify them.
and start to work to eliminate them.
Start to work to eliminate them.
Streamline your workflow.
Pardon?
Streamline your workflow.
Start to be able to build efficiencies into the process. We want to get rid of waste, not people. People aren't waste. Bad process is waste. And so we have to be able to identify the different types of waste, partially because different wastes have different countermeasures to resolve them. And we could dig into that more deeply as time goes on. But the fact is we should need to be able to recognize it. If we can recognize waste, we don't have to worry about separating that or accidentally reducing value. So every process is designed to deliver some level of value, and it's interrupted by waste along the way, or slowed down, or degraded. The value is degraded some way by waste. So we want to know the difference between the value-adding steps in the process and the wasteful steps in the process. And then we want to remove the waste out of the process. And so it's key to know the 8 wastes so that we can do that in an effective way. For this group, you have a responsibility to lead your team members. And we've been teaching some of the model cell team members about the 8 wastes, right, Allison?
That's correct.
And so if your team members know about the 8 wastes, you need to know about the 8 wastes in order to ask good questions and to help direct them as it relates to, are they doing good continuous improvement work or not? That's my hypothesis. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's important that we know what these 8 wastes are. We can identify them, and then we can challenge the process, not the people, but the process around the waste that's interrupting our daily work. Just to close out the waste discussion, you have to know waste if you're going to coach your team members, and we're going to help them understand how to take waste out of the process. So it's just an important concept for you to get a grasp around. Just for your own edification, this morning we had the senior leadership team in here, and we went through a lot of the same things that you're going through, and we're going to look at building some of the performance boards, and as many of you know, they're already building a lot of their performance boards. And I would say Patricia Gagliano had a rather exceptional set of boards, I would say, if I was to call out some really, really nice work. And she had visual process performance. She had a lot of visuals for boards that were at different levels. She had performance boards at a couple of different levels, which I'll talk about. And then she even developed her the first person I see to develop their snapshot of the Gemba Walk. We talked a little bit about that last time, which is the leader's routine of going through the boards in their accountable area, and the map for that of when they would do it and how much time they would spend. So I would say there's a lot to learn from what Patricia is doing and what she's proposed. So I want to investigate a little further. I hope I haven't overburdened her. So linking goals of the organization, the continuous improvement structure and behaviors. So, you have goals and you have the key performance indicator effort happening in the organization. So setting goals, we do that with strategy deployment, which is really what you're working on. It helps make sure that the goals are cascaded effectively across the organization. The structured time in the Gemba, structured time where the work is being done. Oftentimes that is done at the performance board. And that is what I was just talking about. Dr. Tricia has a nice example of monitoring operational execution against the goals. That happens on the performance board. Are we ahead or behind? And you'll see this as we get in our example. Monitoring continuous improvement. We've talked about this before. So I see behind me even there are some sheets that are mock-ups of performance board, purpose, process, PDCA people. So you're seeing these components of it, engaging team members, peoples as a part of it, as a part of that. So we expect these performance boards over time to become more linked in a referential way up to the departmental level or a mid-level and then a departmental level and eventually up to Ted Will's board, which is this one right up here, this corporate roll-up that effectively links the corporate goals down to the work that's being done. And these boards could be more project-oriented or team-oriented or value stream. You heard me use that word before, oriented. These functional roll-ups could be roll-ups of projects into consolidating actions of several efforts to consolidate into a project. And this is often what we see then is a departmental board. And Ted's direct reports in here this morning were all presenting different layers of their departmental board. So if you have multiple teams that kind of report up to you, or projects that report up to you, you might have a summary board that might be a project summary board or a departmental level board that sums up all of the efforts and the work within and the status of happening in that department. Or you might just have a project board that you're a lead of, and your information might roll up to a more senior leader board. But eventually, and we know not exactly today, all of these boards link together back up to the top to make sure that we're delivering on the results and the goals and the strategy of the organization overall so you can be successful. That makes sense. It's easy to say, it's not easy to do. But the only way to do it is to get started and do it, and that's where you're at. You're going to start. The catchball process is the bridge as information is cascaded up and down and between these levels in the organization as these boards are created. The interactive nature of the boards creates what we call catchball, which is I throw a ball to you, Donna, you throw it back to me. We're exchanging our ideas about what's appropriate and relevant. This morning, hope I'm not telling too much, but this morning with the executive team, they said, we have a lot of KPIs, we have a lot of corporate goals, and we have a lot of departmental goals. Do they all match each other in an effective way, and do they perfectly link all the way horizontally and vertically in the organization? Probably a pretty low chance of that. Why would you be different than anybody else? That's complicated, right? That's not easy to do. So as you go through this process, you will improve the corporate goals and the KPIs and the departmental goals to, as you start to see them visually, start to either link together or not link together. You can have meaningful conversations about what should we do about it versus just accepting what we have and everyone trying to do the right thing, but maybe even doing too many things. So the catchball process is us trading priorities back and forth with each other to make sure that we have alignment vertically and horizontally, and that we trust we're all moving in the right direction, but we can have open and frank conversations with each other about are we doing the right things or not. Part of what the visual management / performance boards provides to it is a better mechanism to have those conversations than to sit in a room and hypothetically discuss them. If you were going to build a corporate level performance board, right? If you were Ted Will, you're gonna build Ted Will's overall iPro performance board. Would it have the same information as a Medicaid project board?
Probably not.
Probably not. Probably not. Would have some of the same concepts, right? But it wouldn't necessarily have the same information, right? Ted's probably gonna be very strategic, right? We're gonna look at more strategic things in alignment of how you're trying to move and change this organization. In a operational area at the frontline level, we're gonna be more tactical. We need to deliver these things on this particular time frame. So are the measurements and the goals and the display of the information going to be the same? Probably not, right? How much do you think I'm worried about that? 0. So Allison's heard my speech over and over again. If the board doesn't help you organize and make visual the work that you have, it's not doing what you want, and you have to change it and update it. So, if this behind you, right here, was Ted's board, and we had a title up here that said, iPro Master Board. So last week I was in Germany at a clinic and fighting my way through German language, but they were building the clinic's master board for their whole clinic. What were the safety, cost, quality, delivery, customer experience metrics that they needed to have at this clinic to be a successful clinic? And we had to break them down into safety was 2 components, right? Safety of their own staff at the clinic, but safety of the patients that they didn't kill them, right? And so identifying those metrics then helped put purpose. If this was Ted's board, what stuff would you put in hypothetically, in the purpose section? The goals, the targets. What kind of things would you have in there? Off the top of your head.
It is the 4 corporate goals.
Yes.
The four corporate goals.
Customer service.
You would state, so our idea about these boards is you would have stated what those are and how we're going to measure them. Not how we're performing, that's separate. What they are and how we're gonna measure them. Why is that important to put that into the purpose section? Guesses? It's supposed to be an obvious question. Everybody knows what we're supposed to do. Least amount of confusion, most amount of inclusion and participation for the organization. We might not agree with the goals and the targets, but then we have a way to say, I see them, but maybe we should talk about them. Or at least I can look at them and say, I have a way to contribute. And so I can also make a contribution to the goals and purpose. So then, okay, if you have that, this section is process. Let's say that's process. This is where we would put the information relating on how we're delivering on these goals. This goal is at this point, at this time, and we're either ahead or behind. And we can look at this visually very quickly and say, I see what we're trying to do. I see how we're doing against that. And we can have a very quick and easy conversation to say, we should do something or should we not do something, right? That's what facilitation of these huddles are. Ted is going to do this with his leadership team monthly? I don't remember, was it? No, every 2 weeks. Every other week. In their leadership meeting, they're gonna use their board to go through this. This is what we achieved, we're trying to achieve, is that right or not? This is where we are and how we're delivering on that. Are we ahead or behind, and what adjustments do we need to make? PDCA then is, what are we doing to improve the overall organization, process, project, or system, or department? So there's usually the idea section here. that talks about what are the new ideas that we can put in place to improve things or that are generally easy. And then there's the continuous improvement activities, which would be like Allison's performance board that would roll up to Patty's board as well. So the continuous improvement or model cell or more strategic things. And in this section, maybe the ideas of small things we can do on an ongoing basis. The people section, we would have a lot of different pieces. This morning, there was one introduced, I don't remember, I'm gonna give credit incorrectly to the leader that came up with it. Sue Capone had a kudos section. And it became prevalent in the leadership team that we should all have a kudos section. Something we could celebrate around things that have gone well, people that have done great things. The other thing we could put in here is other initiatives related to building capabilities in our team members, upcoming things that they need to do to be in compliance with their regular work effort, kind of all of those things. Anything related to people that we want to expose and we want everybody to have visibility into. Ted had another section which I like that was added as a sidebar to his. So again, what problem does he want to make visible or have deep understanding of that's relevant for him and his leadership team? And then he went priorities. And he went October. Then he very simply had bullets of priorities that he expected that the group would be focusing on for October. I thought that was pretty cool. I hadn't actually seen that one before in the board. I've seen it buried in what's happening in the activities around performing to standard, but I hadn't seen it in a list like that. I thought it was kind of cool. Other people went, yeah, maybe I should have it, just a little sideline of priorities. So that's how these things propagate. Good ideas should be shared as well. So that would be like the organizational level. We need a roll-up board. The departmental board are often pretty similar. So Sue built one that was similar, and Patricia built one that was similar, and the other people are, and other people built ones that are similar, and then they started, other people are in the process of building. When we start to go below that, we start to see maybe functional team levels, which is the same thing, but more tactical. But then we start to see more project-oriented ones as well, which are more about getting delivery on a particular value stream or a project, and now it gets a little more heavy in the process area and the activities and the actions that are happening to make it visible. Oftentimes this kind of goes away, but this gets kind of really big in the process, so we'll look at those. So our goal here today is to first review the boards that people have already made, so that we have an understanding of what we're working toward, and then start to get to the next stage of development of the board. But I just wanted to give you just a little bit of a refresher overview on what we're thinking about when we do that. If we look at this, again, we would say, what do we want to do? How are we doing? How are we improving? And what are we doing for our people? Those are really main components that we would expect in any board. Subcomponents at all different levels within inside of that. And it should be something that you can walk by at any time, at a glance, and get that information, pull it straight forward into your face, and you should be able to recognize it and walk away. Now, it's hard to do in the beginning that way. But when we coach and we go to organizations where they have boards, we go in, we look at the board, and the first question in my mind that I'm trying to answer is, are they ahead or behind? And does it show me that? Because if I can't tell if they're ahead or behind, it's possible they don't know if they're ahead or behind. And if you don't know if you're ahead or behind and you're not adjusting for it, that's a risk. So that's what we always think and look at. They even, Allison has the word ahead, behind, right on her board. So I've been pushing on that team for a long time. Are you ahead or behind, and do you know it? That's really important, because usually what we find is we're either ahead or behind and we don't know it. We find out too late. Allison, let's go to your Huddle board. Why don't you walk us through it?
Our board, we have it this section, the purpose, the target, and the goals. and we identified 4 goals. So that's that. And then over this section, and tracking our processes, how we are reaching these goals. And so we created some of the visual representations, and this is a pie chart of the library. So we're measuring the empty days in the library. It used to be, and then we recently I took photos, and then it shows how full it is, and then it was, and then we have some empty space there. So if I took a photo today, we actually have more. We have more empty shelves because that's one of the goals is to eliminate paperwork. Eliminate paper there. So this shows. So the blue means essentially empty space now, and then this is the rest. So we still have a way to go. We're still implementing our processes. And then we're archiving something really old worksheets. So that's another process that gets measured. And then we have the scanning portion. There's some of the stuff that needs to be scanned. So we're tracking these. So when people walk through these, our staff, they can see the progress. And then over here, we have our training section. We recognize that our physicians have to be trained, and they have to be continuously trained. So that's why we draw a arrow. We start, and then we keep going, and then the retraining is going to happen, and then it's going to keep going, and then our staff. This icon, it raised a little bit because as I was rolling this over, that idea came off one of the article. And as I showed this to our staff, our board, and then they put me, we need cardiologists. We don't have enough. That means that if we don't have enough cardiologists, we're going to create backlog on the physician reviews. So then we actually recognize that we reviewed the idea sections, and we also have done a lot of staff training, the Microsoft Word training, getting things done training, and then our HIM are doing their training, and there are a lot of training going on. And we also put our announcements here. When we are moving on our model cells, the value stream map to eliminate our steps, every step of the way, we may have a new processes implemented. So we're making announcements. For example, the electronic worksheets, and then we eliminate the PC physician screening. These are all very concrete, and then we have that, and then over this section we have our new initiatives that we identified. And on this end, we have some green dots and the red dots. Green dots are on time. Red dots is that we're just starting the new one. This one, I created the new Huddle board, which is the paper. And the ideas, once they put in the ideas, this is very helpful. And we have assigned someone to be in charge of collecting ideas, and then put into this format that who made contribution on the idea, and what is the idea, what's the status, and what's the decision. It means are they potentially that we're going to implement, or we're going to do it right away, or we already finished it, or some of them they're just not applicable. And then we have who's responsible when we have ideas, and then we have a column that comments. So this list gets discussed during our huddles, and it's been very effective. And the other part I really want to say that this is definitely not our first version. this is already several iterations because once you put your first board up and running, you show all staff, and then a couple weeks later, you're going to say what's working, what's not working, and then revising it. And we also, because we're implementing new processes, and we come up with a second board, which is in the back, that I think Julie has helped us, did a collaborator survey, sent them to our providers, and then we got some comments back. And this part is addressing the comments. This is brand new. We just had this one up and running last week. We had our first huddle on collaborator communications. And this is basically our staff came up with our goals and our measurements, and we set up our goals, the dates, because when you set up measurements, it gives a potential date. This one is December 31st, 2018. We're going to track our communications. And again, we found out that this our experience idea session is very important. So and then we have people, and we have some training. Our staff identified that we need to standardize our communication. For example, the answers to the questions and the frequently asked questions. So here, our staff come up with a draft list of frequently asked questions, and then as a group, our staff will come up with a standardized answer so that it's already written so that everybody will answer the questions similarly. And then we're also going to this one sheet is representing the sharing good practices and good ideas, because in AIMS department we actually have a communication log that logging all the intake of calls and the who called. What's the communication methodology? So that has been really working out nicely. So we introduced that idea to Medicaid. So Medicaid is going to make a new database communication log. So we get to track the calls. And not just the calls, because communications, because they're emails. Then sometimes they're faxes. And there are job zones. There are multiple communication modalities. So that's where we are. So, and then our new ideas. Because of our model cell development on the retro UR reviews, our staff really said that, but we have a cost outlier. When are you going to address cost outlier? And that's another project, and we didn't address it during the first half year because we were so involved in retro, but we feel like we can address it starting November. So we have set up some meetings, and for that, I had come up with another board that's going to really address the cost outlier, and it has our goals about cost outlier, what's our processes. We're going to establish another value stream map, and then we're going to eliminate the redundant, the wastes in it, identify wastes, and we have our people training, and then we're going to collect ideas. We have another board and here. So that's basically in a nutshell what we're doing in Medicaid AIDS combined department.
And so, Allison, how long have you been working on these huddle boards and process? When did we start?
The first board started back in February, our first version.
So think about that, keep that in mind. It's been evolving for a long time at this point.
It evolves, and it takes a lot of input from everybody, and including Patty, because she walks around.
You only said that because I walked in.
Our first draft, our first March, right, when we first started, it didn't look like this. It looked like something else. And then the first, I would say it wasn't a bag, it was a table hanging here. And then I was very proud. So I said, Patty, let me show you our Huddle board. And she pointed out, I said, what does this mean? So it means that because the lean principle is that when everybody walks around at a glance, they know exactly where you are. If Patty is saying that she doesn't understand, that means that piece of paper is not working. Because I'm sure when he walks around, she wouldn't understand it. So we basically,
You have to be open to that.
that's right. You have to
take the feedback and you have to accept it.
And one of the ideas really came up from physicians. When physician came in, I also showed them the board. I said, we have a board. If you have an idea, feel free to put it in. So one of the ideas came from physicians and our staff, our nurses, and they all know to make contributions on ideas. So it's been very effective.
It can create an inclusive environment for other people to put ideas. So not only your team, anybody can
That's
put an idea in that board.
anyone can come in and put an idea.
That's not true. You told me that Chris said I couldn't.
Except for you. You're off the list.
You're off the list,
I
right?
know it was. They tell me all the time.
Your job is to listen carefully and ask good questions. Their job is to solve their problem.
But you did ask a good question. The
That's-
first stuff I came there, and you said that, but I don't understand it. So you did ask the right question though.
So she's doing her job. That's perfect.
And but now everybody walks around, we can see this, and Patty loves this so much, she asked me to put it on her board. So this one is not up, it's on her board.
And the key is you are asking good questions. That's the key.
When they let me near
But not giving answers, asking good questions. So, other questions about Allison's board? You had a question earlier.
Yeah, this is a basic one. So this was where everything started back in February. It sounded like the thing you had done on the other side was that to simply, and this one here, those were expressly to manage a specific project that came out of this, right? Okay.
This this one because we saw the collaborator survey results that Judy has sent us the collaborator survey results. Overall, our providers are very, very happy with us. However, there are a couple of comments that they made. Say something like some of the communications were not answered timely, and then they want a quicker answer. Now, our goal is that our 90% of the providers are happy. If some of them they're not happy, they have comments, and then we address them. So the number one thing that Wendy did is that Wendy actually contacted them and had a conversation with them, identified that it turns out those are brand new IPRO liaisons. They're just new. They just don't know.
Project.
Right. This is our project. Because our project, we have to talk to providers. We have to send them letters. We e-fax letters to them. They send letters, response back to us. They send medical records, charts to us. So there are a lot of communication going back and forth. And when we spoke to them, we found out that our new IPRO liaisons. So that's why here we say, find out who are the new IPRO liaisons. In order for us to address to the issue of new IPRO liaisons, the first thing we need to identify them. Now they're actually, it turns out our IPRO, we have a contact manager in IT. They do send out all the liaisons, the liaison changes to all staff. However, our staff, they may just, they just another email. They're not paying attention. So in the future, since new IPRO liaison is an issue because they do need to be talked to either by Wendy or other people or staff, so we can identify them. So that's the
Right.
second goal is
So
we
Allison,
need to find them out. That's
the
right.
problem on the other side spawned a
The-
new project.
New project, and
This
then
is the detail then.
This is the detail how we solve the the provider communication issue, and this also triggered by I've been saying that Patty does ask really good questions, and she basically just asked us how come this provider complained about this the board is doing the job. So we just came up with this one a couple of weeks ago. And
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Did you have another question about ideas earlier? I thought I heard you asking about some are more simple.
Yeah, my question was kind of after the idea is created, what direction does it spawn into? And it sounds like they kind of funnel in either direction depending on the other side. And you don't just spin it around again.
Yeah.
But
Well, here's another thing that we
these
see.
goals are identified by our staff.
yes.
Yeah, we have the people who are involved on the regular communications with the hospitals. Because there are certain people they're not involved in regular communications. Only two people they are there. So those people are gathered as a huddle and to come up with the other side. Yeah.
So sometimes ideas are simple. We met last week, we're trying to get all the scanning done. We ran into this thing, can we move the scanning cart over here? Yeah, let's do that. The team collaborates and has that conversation. Some are more strategic. We need to solve the problem in a better way, and then it spawns another sub-project to get underway. And that's kind of the nature of it. But the team is talking about their priorities and which way it needs to go, which is a good thing about it. But we need more to look at more boards. This one's very mature. You have other ones that we're gonna share here, so somebody wanna hold theirs up?
This is a draft. This is not something that's been implemented yet.
Gotcha. Yep,
this-
let us know where you are.
Okay, and this is based on a particular project and set of deliverables.
Okay, so it's not a departmental roll-up, it's more of a project you're working on?
Right, it's
Okay,
the
good.
deliverables related to our contract. And it's basically, the purpose is to ensure that our deliverables are timely and have no errors. So that's the purpose. What I did is I tried to outline what the targets would be, so that's how we would define whether or not we were meeting our goals.
Good.
And then in process, I have a description of where we are gonna go to be able to measure that. So within our database, we have fields that would capture the data for all of those. And then I also wrote that we use bi-weekly team meetings and bi-weekly spreadsheets as other places where we can pull data. Under PCDA, the things that I thought we would capture in that area would be motivations, which would be ideas, suggestions from staff. Barriers, so sometimes if somebody makes a suggestion and it sounds like a good idea, well, what do we need to consider if we wanted to try to implement that? Also, I guess waste, right? So redundancies. So what things are we doing that are being done by multiple people or in multiple steps and not producing good results? And then also where we would document the revisions that we're making so that we can track it. And then in the last section, I thought that we would, under people, we would talk about schedules, we would talk about skills or trainings, shout outs, which I guess is Sue's kudos.
Yeah. However you wanna call
And then any updates from, division level, corporate level, or from our external customer.
It's a question for you both. How did you guys pick the things? So I see where you decided, let's attack the library space because you wanted to handle all that paper that was sitting around. Do you have that sense of what kinds of things you want to be targeting and what you're going to prioritize for your metrics that you want to look at?
Yeah, so I think the priority for me would be correcting mistakes and redundancies, because those two areas, when we have issues in those areas, it impacts not only our own deliverables, but it impacts the workflow for other departments. Because we work collaboratively, for example, with Allison's department, so if we make mistakes in our reports, we have to send them back to Allison to reproduce. So those are or even things like travel. When we have issues with travel, it impacts not only our workflow, but another department who shares staff with us. So those are the kind of things that I think we want to prioritize.
How do we do a huddle board virtually?
Virtually?
Like with remote staff.
I've got 4 staff in all. And
One of the ways we do it is we build the huddle board. We believe there's a lot of value in doing a physical huddle board. You can manipulate it faster, you can talk about it, and then generally what we do is a picture snapshot with an iPhone or any phone. Not an Apple guy, I don't care. Take a picture of it just before the huddle meeting and send it out to people. You could do WebEx, but oftentimes it's hard to see through the camera. Just take a picture, send it, and then talk about it. And it is good to do it, in my opinion, in front of a WebEx if you can, because even though everybody has a picture, you can do a little changing and erasing while people are visually online to do it. But I don't know how many rooms you have or the capability. Oftentimes you can do it off your PC, that works too, with that camera.
should that huddle board be here with me or with the staff and the supervisor at the other end?
That's a good question. That's something you'll have to figure out. So I don't know that I have a great answer. I know that it might make sense to have it near you, because if your rolls up to the next one, then there's an opportunity for the next level to come and see your board as well and talk through it with you and coach you in the process as well. And that's part of the whole cascading system, right? The boards connect to each other and people are able to go sort of up and down through the process and ask good questions that help connect it. So Patty can ask good questions about what's happening on this board, and she can summarize some of the results the team are doing on her board. And when Ted meets with her on her board, he knows that it connects all the way down into what Medicaid is doing in some way. One of the ways that we create the strength of that as well is how do the metrics link? If you remember, we were talking about, in this section, I was talking about Ted's got the corporate goals here and the successive layers down through departments and even to projects. Like the backside of Allison's board should have some logical link in KPIs back to the corporate goals. They're not going to be perfect to begin with, but even with here at your purpose, where you have your KPIs, where you're trying to meet these things, we should be able to draw a link to the next layer up and show how those align so that we know we're making the contribution. And if we can't do that, this is the perfect example for us to question, should we be doing this thing? Because if we can't move where our corporate goal is going, maybe we're not working on the right things. On the other hand, maybe there's a requirement we do this in the face of anything just to stay in operation in business or from a compliance perspective. But doing this process creates the mechanism to force us to ask those questions, which is what we want in a respectful way, knowing that everybody's trying to do the right thing. Just sometimes we don't have all that connected activity, and this is a way to help connect them. Allison, you're used to this now. Can I ask you a hard question about your board?
Yes.
So for the pie chart that shows where you are in the emptying the file room, are you ahead or behind?
We're on target.
You're on target? How do I know?
The
Blue is good?
yeah. We're expanding the group, so our goal is by January 31st, early next year.
So I'm just challenging because
But we have a
if you
deadline.
had a green dot or a red red status or a green status, that would tell me right away. Green is good. Red, we should talk about something.
Right, and
I've
also,
also seen it where people have taken a pie chart like that in the upper right corner. They have either a smiley face or a frowny face.
oh, I like that. So we'll add a smiley face there.
There you go. Now I know. We're on target.
Since beginning, we take people photo because as a group, we took multiples, we send them to Blue and to publish them. And that really raised the whole team spirit. And then, when we get to that, then we realize our library physically is changing. So we're starting to not taking people anymore, we're taking the physical changes. The changes didn't happen in one day. If you look at February, it's totally different. But if I take a photo today, add to a third photo, it's much more empty.
Very important.
Very important, the visual.
Dakota, do you want to share with us yours?
Yes. So, for our staff and contractor surveillance, the purpose, so we need 100% compliance from our staff to submit their surveys, which is our deliverables for our client, into our CCST app on a timely basis. So it should be submitted on a weekly basis. The process, so I may have things out of order, but the process at this point, and it's not complete, is to do a QA on a weekly basis to determine if surveys are entered. Now, I'll just finish that. So that's one. Two, and this is future, the second one, futuristic, is to obtain the DOA survey schedule to validate our entries, our survey entries. To obtain IPRO email addresses for our DOH embedded staff to communicate to our staff any updates and reminders. So we're not using their DOH website email address. To obtain data analysis related to staff use of CCST. And also currently, I'm doing a travel voucher audit. So that includes travel vouchers, CCST, and Deltec, our timesheet, to ensure that the facility names, codes, and dates match. People, so of course, training use of CCST, some sort of recognition system, and that hasn't been established yet. To, and I say create, but to update their cheat sheet that they have now. And then I was thinking if somehow I could create a contest between the programs to see if that would inspire people to enter their information on a timely basis. PBS, CA, suggestions from the staff, to attempt to get some sort of data analysis to see how we're making progress. So I can already answer that we are behind without an official analysis, but we are behind. And then we get from two of the programs program monthly closure report, and so I contrast that report to the survey and CCST to see if they're accurate.
Right.
Are you able to get a report out of CCSC that tells you about that timeliness?
No, that's what we're working on now.
Okay.
And actually, I just spoke with No, I spoke to Stephen because we're going to have to speak to Carl
Okay.
to get that.
Okay.
So in our particular project, our main issue is competitors trying to take the work away from us and trying to constantly be in a position of being seen as the indispensable resource, because we both have external contractors who want to take the work and we have the actual contractor who hired us looking to take the work back. So to do that, there's two things that are on this board to focus on. There are, of course, a lot of other things that we're doing, but to kind of keep it very streamlined for this process. One is a website redesign. And that is to address the issue of the massive hospital staff turnover and having a whole lot of users that come in that have no idea what they're supposed to be doing in the project. They hear it's their job on the elevator, and then they come to our website, which has everything under the sun that they'll ever need to know. But you need to know something to be able to get through the website because we have such a massive amount of information there. So we're revamping the website to basically have a new to sepsis site, and it's going to be the life of a sepsis case. And it's very sort of visual, kind of walk you through what's your task, what were you assigned to do, are you collecting data, are you reporting data, are you doing the protocol and so forth. And then the other side is for everybody who already knows what they're supposed to do, but they have to go back and check regulations, dictionaries, specifications, measures, and so forth. So that's one thing. That's a very measurable, though I have nothing measured at the moment. It is a very measurable thing because you have specific things like development of the material itself, draft of what the site's going to look like, material matched to the site, and then deployment by section. So that is very much a measurable component that we can do. It's something we've been working on for a while, getting it to the point where it becomes high enough in the priority to kind of get done is a whole other issue. The second one is actual competitors trying to take over the whole reporting component of our initiative. And so we have been in a multi-stage process to kind of step in front of them, politely step in front of them. And so the contractor determined that they wanted to use this external agency to create Tableau reports. We kind of played the game with them saying fantastic and stepped in front of them by releasing audit reports in Tableau. So in the process of that, we're actually now this week presenting that stuff in Tableau to the state from iPro. They're having us demo it. And at the moment, it looks as though we are in fact going to remain in front of them, but that's a whole initiative that needs to occur quickly. And it's also something that can be very measurable, but again, has to kind of move up in the process where we can map out, has it all been designed, where are we in Tableau? Each of these things involves different people from different departments. So we have weekly meetings with these services that switch between the different tasks that we're trying to do. So one week we're talking about the website design, and it's a collaboration between the material that's created by people directly in my department and then processes that have to be put in place by e-services and website department. The same as Tableau. We can create material, but then we have to build at the same time. And we also have to work with this external agency that the DOH has at the table in meetings as well. And then this last box is kind of how do we link this entire initiative to the key process indicators. And so it links to customer satisfaction. It leads to the training that needs to occur to make sure that our staff know how to use Tableau and continue to build their skills, which is then going to actually lead to additional employee satisfaction. So we did try to link it to the KPIs. So this was kind of the reverse, I think, of where all of this stuff is already all over the place in my office, but actually taking it and mapping it into this is going to require that I create real timelines and actually have my charts and my measures.
Awesome. That's great. Questions, thoughts, feedback?
I have a question, I'm not sure how it directly relates to lead, but as you're talking about competition, I'm thinking about your website and all the resources and the checklists and all these great things that a competitor would love to take. So do people have to log in order to be able to access that?
They don't have to log in. The long-term solution that I would actually like there is once I get close to deployment, I actually want to use my connections on the National Sepsis Alliance and the Global Sepsis Alliance to actually create like some kind of streaming resource. And I actually would ultimately like iPro to be the resource for sepsis. So you don't have to log into our site to get this information, but you do want to see iPro as sepsis. And we have a little bit of an advantage being the first nation in the state to do the public reporting, having a lot of publications that come out as a result of that. And as a sidebar, we're actually trying to also slowly work to having a sellable product that would be like a standalone red cap. And so as we deploy all of this, we want to also have them, hey, you want to do that at your hospital? Click here. So the long-term goal is not only to maintain this customer, but to actually bring in more business with the product that we have.
All right, well, we achieved the next step then. I think we have all the ones that have been shared. So now let's work to advance these. And I'm here to help, and Patty's here to ask good questions, and Judy's here to help as it relates to how we take what we have now and get it to the next level. So this is time available for you to work on. Go ahead and start. There's lots of paper, and markers, you can mock up some drafts, or next to the
Cross-training, so we don't have as much siloing going on. So we gotta resolve our own stuff first and move on.
This is the how we're gonna get there, and are we ahead or behind on these things. The interesting part here.
Okay.
And then she worked with Stanley to get data out of the Travelog database.
Mm-hmm.
So she knows how many average days for a supervisor to approve a
So
travel.
what'd you learn?
And that's
What did you do? What did we get out of it?
I think from everything, that you really have to be open to change and you have to be honest, and realistic about what's going on in the things that we're seeking to change and not be afraid.
Agreed.
Yeah.
You know, this morning, the leadership team, somebody brought up, I don't remember who, said, Chris, how do teams start putting red colors on their boards related to the process when their culture is to make sure everything's green all the time? I said, I don't know. And the question went further to say, what percentage of the stuff on the board should be red? And I went, well, I don't know that there's an exact percentage, but if nothing's red on the board, you got to figure out how either you're lying to yourself or you don't know what's happening, because it's not possible. And it is a cultural shift to say we're going to expose where we're ahead or behind or on target, and be okay with being behind, to say that's how we create collaborative problem solving within groups. That it can't be a scarlet letter when somebody posts red on their board. They should be rewarded for that. The other question that came up related to that was, does that mean our ISO compliance is red? No. That is a separate thing. Your ISO compliance, you could be 100% in compliance with ISO and 100% green, and you should be from a regulatory perspective, but you could still have goals and targets that you're driving to evolve the organization outside of that. That's okay. You know, when Sarah and I were working in the financial industry, people were worried that we put yellow and red results on a lot of our, probably better than half of what we were doing from the organization. And the OCC was coming to audit the organization, you know, second largest bank in the country. And everybody said, well, can we actually have red and yellow on there? And I said, yes. This is not a regulatory compliance issue. This is an expose of how we're trying to improve the organization. The OCC came and their feedback was, you should be a model for banking because you are being open and honest and courageous, to your point, Dakota, about how we're trying to move forward and how to change them. But it doesn't turn overnight, and team members are going to have a lot of anxiety as it relates to being able to post things that are in red. And you as managers and leaders have a very solemn responsibility the first time you see your team members moving something to red to not chastise them and say, that's not red, that's actually green. As opposed to saying, oh, looks like we have an issue that I could support you on, tell me what's happening. That's kind of a whole different approach. So it's not an easy transition to make. Great comment, thank you. So, these categories of something, these are just examples of some of the things that we might see on those boards, how we're performing, different little matrices or things. You had examples you were already looking at. In here you'll see just a big variety bag of performance boards from all different industries. Nice little visuals here. Where are we in the process? Red, green, yellow. Easy to see. Stoplights are nice. We were just talking in the other room with Allison around smiley faces and frowny faces. What's red and green as it relates to how we're tracking towards results and different things. You can see there's just a variety of bag there. There are also some guidelines here that you can look at. Located in a visible spot, not locked in a room somewhere, so people should be able to get at it, put ideas on it anytime they want. Clear links to your strategy. This is the KPI piece that you're working on and the dashboard. Perfect is the enemy of good, so don't let perfection get in the way of trying. Start putting stuff on there and ignore the fact that it's going to be perfect. It should be rough to begin with. Quick and crude, keep updates, and then these boards are used in the huddle. One of my suggestions is go to one of the other team's huddles, like Allison's huddle here in this room, and participate and be a listener of the huddle and see what they do. Typically, you'll see that people huddle at the board. These people have got carried away. There's a hospital. By the way, if you go out to YouTube and you click Daily Huddle on YouTube, there are endless examples of people actually filming themselves with iPhones doing their huddles at their performance board. You'll see a big variety bag of in what order, about what metrics, for what problems. I suggest go and look there. Here are some huddle guidelines. Clear purpose, frequent. A lot of your model cell people here are doing it weekly. Some organizations do it every day. Some departmental boards are done on a bi-weekly or a monthly basis. You really have to set, if you're unsure what to set your time frame on for your huddle, set it at a shorter cycle. And you can always decide you don't need to do it as frequently. What a bad sign is if you set your huddle and every huddle should be 10 to 15 minutes and for some reason it's 2 hours long, that's not a huddle anymore. That's more of a project or a department meeting, and the huddle should replace a lot of project and department meetings, but it should be stand up and focused. My suggestion is never over 15 minutes. If it goes over 15 minutes, you've got something else to look at. Required attendees. In the huddle lead, whoever's going to do the huddle, and the team members that are part of that functional area, process, or department. Meeting time 10 to 15 minutes, keep attendance. It doesn't mean that, again, that this is for punishment. This is for just keeping track of who's participating. The huddle lead facilitates the meeting. We'll look at the roles here in a minute. Content, review the performance. Where are you? Ahead or behind, red or green. So you should be able to find red or green. Review where you're at as it relates to the volume of work you have. Are we overburdening people or not? Review any issues that or ideas that are in the idea cards. Okay? Review continuous improvement activity that might be going on, like additional model cell work or project work that you have. And new improvement ideas. Assign new action items, decide if things can be fixed or not, and if they can be fixed in a short way, great, go ahead and make a decision who's going to be accountable for it. If it's something that's more strategic, then you may have to flip your board around like Allison did and start a project on the back of it, which is a little more detailed in order to get where you are. The roles in the huddle are the huddle lead, whoever that is, if it's your board, it's you. And you're huddling with your team. And your team and you facilitate it, you check this, you make sure you start and stop on time. You complete all the content that we had showed previously or some level of that. Show respect by asking questions, record action. The participants, your team members, are contributing the status, information, issues, actions, setting agreements about what they're going to do for the day, the week, or the month, whatever the time frame is. If Patty shows up, so she was in our room next door, if Patty Weinberg shows up at your huddle, and she knows this, her leader role is then to show respect, listen, not tell, and remove any roadblocks after the meeting at the request of the lead. So the more senior leader that came to that huddle that isn't their board, isn't there to give direction, is there to watch, observe, understand, and show respect. And then afterwards, if necessary, help support.
Chris, can I ask
Yeah,
you a question?
please do.
The coaches are being trained to be the huddle leads, is that right?
Well, they can support that role. It doesn't remove the responsibility for the board owner to play that role. You can't just delegate this out. So, you can delegate some of the responsibilities to help gather information, keep the board up to date, and those things as well. But the way I describe it is, in my house, if we're spiritual in my house, I can't delegate my religious responsibilities to my wife and say, that's good. We both have to participate, right? So in order to be real. So in your house, at your board, you're both accountable. You can't delegate it to the lead. You need to be accountable for that as well. But the coaches should be able to help you accelerate your development of your board and help you maintain and keep it forward. You may have them help coach some of the huddle sessions to begin with, but I am going to suggest that long term. I've never seen a basketball coach shooting baskets on the floor during the game. So if their job is really a coach, then the team members should be playing ball on the court, but the coach should be helping them advance to the next level. But you have to decide how you want to use your words here and how you want to use those roles. And to begin with, you want to rely more heavily on people that can help support you. But over time, you should decide how that works. If you find yourself delegating things away entirely, so you don't have to do them, that's not a good thing. That's my advice. Judy, thoughts on that?
And the only thing that the huddles keep going. Just because you're on vacation, and that's a perfect delegation. You could delegate to one of the coaches to take over if you were on vacation.
Yeah, and that's another thing. So if there's 12 people in the huddle and only 8 can be there, have the huddle. People come and go, but the huddle should be a structure that stays the same at the same time, at the same day, on an ongoing basis at all times. Earlier today, your leadership team talked about the fact that many of them are starting their huddles at 9 o'clock. And they're considering making a safe zone in the organization for meetings so that people can perform their huddles without getting trampled on by another meeting. Keeping in mind that customers always have requests and things get impacted that way. And we know that, business gets in the way of what we want to do, right? But the fact is you should be thinking about it in those terms. And if you're gone, the huddle should happen. We talked about metrics and making sure that in your goal section, the metrics are aligned to your strategic outcomes, what you're trying to do, what your corporate objectives are. And the vital few projects or initiatives or efforts that you're doing in your performance area somehow are contributing to that in some way. We want to make sure that, in the old methods, typically we saw a lot of lagging indicators, old reports after the process already happened, told us what happened. We don't like those. We want to have leading indicators in our performance metrics. In other words, that's are we ahead or behind on an ongoing basis? That's a leading indicator that allows us to take corrective actions while we're still doing the work or trying to achieve the goal, rather than finding out after we get done that somehow we didn't make it. So think about leading indicators. The KPIs down at the team level are rolling up somehow to this level, and eventually up to Ted's level. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some that are more at this level that don't roll up, but there should be many or most at these levels that roll up. You know, you might have some small departmental goals that you have to achieve that don't necessarily roll to the top, but the fact is the initiatives that you're running, the departmental metrics that you're linking and creating action around need to roll up to the top of the organization. It's very easy to say, it's not so easy to do. You're very early in the process, as we talked about earlier, around making all of these links and connections. You've had KPIs for a long time, now we're trying to link it together. This visual right here shows us in those quadrants of purpose, your KPR goal targets are in there. These are the goals and targets. This is a what do we want to achieve in that purpose section. In the process section is we're tracking towards those goals and targets. Are we ahead or behind? Are we ahead or behind? The PDCA is then, if we're behind, we do process improvement, or if we want to get to the next level, we're going to do process improvement. We're going to have our information there. And eventually we're going to also identify, I got to put kudos in there now, because that's a word that came up today, around what's going on with our team, our capabilities, our skill sets, our rewards that we're keeping everyone together. And this is my departmental board, some level of this. But if I know at a glance, I can see if I'm ahead or behind, what I'm trying to achieve, and what I'm doing about it if I am not getting the goal that I want, I'm working on the red, you've made the board. The team can huddle, they can get together in 15 minutes or so, they can talk about what they need to do to check adjust, and they can go forward, and we can eliminate a lot of other meetings, and we can make sure that people are strategically aligned. That's the idea. Other questions? All right, we used 6 extra minutes of your life. You're never going to get that. Thank you for your attendance and participation in today's session. Don't forget, the most important thing is to take action, learn, and adjust as you go. Good luck in your lean journey.